Welcome to this session, which is Kinship Care, Hidden Heroes. It's going to be a really great session, something that's really close to my heart, and certainly the people that will be joining will get an awful lot out of it. It's a bite-sized session, so I'm going to be really quick. I'm Catherine Witt, and I'm one of the regional engagement leads for Social Work England. So just some housekeeping slides. Legal disclaimer, we do not endorse third party their views and we do not endorse third party content. So we accept no liability for the content of third party or sector led sessions during Social Work Week. Your privacy is important to us, and we won't use your information for anything other than what we have collected it for, which is for these sessions. And your personal data will be kept for up to 3 years in accordance with our data retention schedule. So I'm now going to hand over to Carrie Blackwood. Carrie will introduce herself. She's one of our National Advisory Forum members, and she's a practicing social worker. Carrie's nan is joining this session, so we're really excited about that. But she is a bit of a star this week. She's done loads of radio interviews for Changing the Script in It's Our campaign. So if you want to catch Carrie on Radio 5 Live, you'll be able to hear that. But we're really excited to have her present this session because this is her practice base, and she is going to spend the next 25 minutes giving you a bit of insight into that. So welcome, Carrie. I'm going to take myself off the screen and pop you on. And then I will get your slides up. So you can introduce yourself while I am doing that.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, gosh, I'm on the screen. I've got to bring you on the screen, take me off. Right, sorry about that. Take off screen. Brilliant. So I will, I don't know what's going on there. Pop you on. Brilliant, thanks for that. And I'll get the presentation.
Yeah, so just while you're doing that, I'll just, I guess, introduce myself a bit more. So my name's Carrie Blackwood. As Catherine said, I'm also on the National Advisory Forum for Social Work England, and I'm a social worker in Sheffield. So my background, I did a couple of years in child protection, and then obviously I've moved into a kinship team, which is where this session has kind of come about. So we've got a lot of questions to answer in this session. Because it's only a bite-sized one, a lot of the things that I'll be covering will be really short and snappy. But generally, I hope you'll get a sense of what kinship care is, so some really broad definitions, what the outcomes are for children in kinship care placements, what do children and their carers say about these placements, what the challenges are, changes in legislation, and then right at the end, we'll have a little look at what professionals can take to their practice. Because I'm imagining there's quite a few social workers and social work students on here. So hopefully that will give you a bit of support that right at the end. So let's have a look at what kinship care is. Now, this slide might be a bit heavy in terms of definitions and just explanations for all of these different things. I could probably do a session on each one of these. So again, it's going to be quite broad definitions. So generally, kinship care is basically when a child or young person is placed with someone in their wider network who isn't their parent. So you might hear the term private family arrangement being used quite often. So this is where the parent or the parents of the child or children have agreed for them to live somewhere else, such as with a grandparent. So it's a private arrangement because there's no need for social care involvement. So as you can see underneath, we've got quite a few different alternatives to that. The one that I mainly work in my area is Regulation 24 assessments. So my job is supervising and assessing basically friends and family carers. So this is where the local authority has parental responsibility for a child, usually under some form of a care order. So it means the local authority has to place the child with an approved foster carer. So obviously, friends and family members aren't usually approved foster carers already. So that's where I come in to basically try and get them approved as foster carers. Private fostering, again, I could do a whole session on this, but just a really quick snapshot. So this is where a child under the age of 16 or under the age of 18, if they have a disability, is cared for by someone who isn't a parent or a close relative. So it's a private arrangement made between the parent and the carer and expected to last 28 days or more. Special guardianship orders, that's going to be something that I talk about quite a bit in this session. So we'll go into it in a bit more detail later. But basically, it's where it's an order that grants the carers uh, as a special guardian. So in doing so, that secures the placement that the child has, and it grants some parental responsibility to that carer as well. And then right at the bottom there, we've got child arrangement orders. There are two different types of these. So one of them says where the child is going to live, and the other one says who the child can spend time with and for how long. Um, just a quick note on that. So child arrangement orders replaced residence and contact orders in 2014. So you might hear both of those terms used, but currently it's child arrangement orders now. So as it's my specialty, let's do a little bit more of a Regulation 24 deep dive. So as I said, my job is assessing and supervising Regulation 24 placement. So I work with the carers while the child still has their own social worker. So they have a field-work social worker still allocated to them. So we've got a maximum of 24 weeks to complete a full assessment, and there's an incredible amount that goes into this. So I'm going to rattle off some of the things that these carers are expected to do. So we do police check, DBS. They have to attend fostering medical. I have to speak to 3 of their references. I have to speak to all of their own children. I do checks with every single agency involved, with current and past employers. I do checks with ex-partners, which is always a really unpopular one for obvious reasons. And alongside all of those checks, I do lots of assessment sessions that cover basically everything to do with their life. So I cover their childhood, their own trauma, current and past relationships, finances, parenting capacity, support network, family tree, and really the list goes on. So it's an incredible amount that these carers are being asked to commit to. They attend the same fostering panel that mainstream foster carers do. So if you're looking to see a distinction, I would say mainstream foster carers, they look after children they're not connected to, kind of like their job and their profession. Whereas connected carers is the term you'll sometimes hear. They're friends and family members that didn't sign up to all of this extra bit, but they still have to do all the same things as mainstream foster carers, and they go to the same panel. And alongside that as well, they are measured against the national minimum fostering standards. So that's kind of like keeps in context everything about the assessment. We're trying to link to those and support people to meet all of those standards. Some statistics. I've tried not to be too heavy with the stats and the numbers. All of this is taken from Department of Education. So if you have a look on the Gov website, you can see these in more detail. But just a brief overview that the number of children classes looked after in England rose by 2% last year. And the number of children classes looked after is continuing to rise. And this is a trend that we've seen throughout the last few years as well. Adoption was down by 2% last year. And crucially for this session, the number of special guardianship orders granted has been increasing steadily in the past 10 years. And it is only likely that this is going to increase. So that's why awareness of kinship care is really important and quite topical now. This is the current picture. So more than 130,000 children live in kinship care arrangements in England, and kinship carers make up over a fifth of all foster carers. And again, from trends in the data, it's very likely that kinship placements are only going to increase as the years go by. So why is this important? Well, let's talk about some of the outcomes for children that are in kinship placements. So this was taken from a systematic review of kinship care, and this was published in 2018. So a little bit outdated now, but still very relevant, I think. So overall, kinship care showed a positive effect on placement stability, and that was based on high strength evidence. Children in kinship care were more likely than children in foster care to achieve permanence through a court order. They were less likely to be adopted. They were less likely to have social and emotional problems. And there was no clear difference between kinship care and foster care in relation to outcomes, including reunification. So, reunification is where the child goes back to birth parents, the length of the placement stay, or educational attainment. So, a lot of really good reasons why kinship placements are important. But if you're still not convinced, we could spend a really long time looking at statistics, what the research and theory tells us. But the most important and impactful thing, in my opinion, is what these carers and young people have to say themselves. So these are all things that carers and the children have said to me through my work with them. Some of them specifically gave responses for this presentation because they wanted to tell other people what it is that they were going through and give people a bit of an understanding and insight into their world. Obviously, all names and identifying information have been removed, but hopefully that doesn't detract from the real power of the words that they had to say. So, more broadly, as I said before, I'm in Sheffield City Council and they conducted a bright spot survey in 2023. So, another very recent study. And this was conducted with kinship family placements that we have in Sheffield. And this is what the kids had to say. So, 94% felt that their kinship carers were sensitive to their feelings. Children in kinship care reported to be happy with the level of contact with the family. We'll talk a little bit more about contact and some of the challenges that come with that a bit later. But they also reported better outcomes in terms of trusted adults and friendships, and they were happier at school and felt their carers were supportive. So let's get into some direct quotes. So this was a young person who was cared for by a family friend after her parent really sadly passed away. And this is what she had to say. So she'd said, I was worried when social workers first got involved because I didn't want to live with strangers. I even packed a bag to get away. And when we were talking about her carer and the kind of relationship that she had with her and how she felt about it, she'd said she used to go on holidays and out with her friends, but she doesn't do that now. Her life's nothing like it used to be before she was looking after me. And this young person had a lot of guilt to do with this family friend looking after her. And she did say that she felt bad that she'd limited this carer's opportunities and really changed her life. But she'd also said, I'm glad I'm with someone I know. I never want to leave now. She's stuck with me until I'm 25, which I think is a real testament to their relationship because when she first moved there, she said, I'm moving out the day I turn 18. I want my own life, my own responsibility. And now I think adulthood is looming and she's realizing that being an adult's quite scary sometimes. So she's quite happy where she is. This is the family friend, so the carer of the young person that I just spoke about. She said, I originally thought of foster care as taking a child out of care and giving them somewhere to live until they were adopted, like Tracy Beaker. She'd also said, I'm glad I'm able to give her a stable home until she feels ready to leave. So I spoke to both of them together, and when the young person had said, oh, I feel like I'd limited her opportunities, the carer strongly disagreed. She said she does not regret her decision at all. She would absolutely do this again. And she's taken a lot from this experience and she's gained a much deeper relationship with this young person that she would have never had before. So here are some quotes from grandparents caring for their grandsons. They'd said, we feel so guilty we didn't see what was happening. We'll do everything we can to give them a fighting chance. It wasn't even a question. Of course we would have them. This guilt is something that I hear and see from kinship carers a lot. They feel really bad that they didn't see what was happening or things were hidden from them. And sometimes they don't find out at all any of these things that are happening until they're suddenly asked, will you care for these children in your network? And then all of this comes out, and there's a tremendous amount of guilt that comes along with that. This one for me, I think is gonna be the most impactful because I think about the children that went to live with their aunts when they first got there to what they were like when I did my final visit, and this is what the aunts said when we were going through the assessment. They said, "We took the kids to the park the other day and they lit up. It's not something they've done before. It was so emotional seeing them all laughing and playing together. We want them to have more experiences like going to the park or the beach for the first time." And it seems really mundane going to the park, going to the beach, these first experiences. But for these children, it was a huge change in their lives. And although it was overwhelming for the kids at times because they were experiencing things that they'd never done before, like going to the park, again, a very mundane thing, it was massively impactful for them and for the carers as well. So this is a quote from a grandmother caring for her two children. I've been in their lives since they were born. I'll do anything for them. And again, this all just shows the levels of love and dedication that these carers have to these children in their network. Some more quotes here from a great aunt and uncle caring for their recently born nephew. I can cope with sleepless nights or whatever caring for him might bring. It kills me to think of him living with anyone else. It will break my heart if he leaves. Everyone would be devastated if he was taken away, and it would leave a hole in everyone's life and hearts. So, just to note here that a lot of carers have kind of impending fear or impending doom, as some of them have said to me, when it gets towards that final order. So, quite often, they've been looking after these children for months before it comes to the final order where it's decided where these children are going to end up. Are they going to go back to parents? Are they going to stay with the current carers? And even if there are plans in place for them to stay with the current carers, there's still always that fear until that order is made that something's going to happen and these children are going to be removed and taken somewhere else. And I think sometimes it doesn't matter how much reassurance they get, there's always going to be that fear until that final order is made. And quite often they're worried and anxious about these children going back to parents because then they have a full understanding of what actually has happened to these children. Some more quotes here from family friends caring for a young person. They said, "We would have wanted someone to do this for our son. Knowing we've kept her safe and done what her dad would have wanted is the most rewarding part." So I know I've gone through a lot of quotes here. I've got some more quotes to come, but I just felt it was much more impactful hearing it from their own words rather than hearing me say, and this is what they said, and they have this general impression. So, and it's clear from all of this that they put themselves through an incredible amount. And I think as a social worker, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that. And I think, especially for fieldwork social workers, I think you are so pleased and relieved that a child is put in a safe place that kind of the rest of that is out of your mind and you're on to the next crisis. So, what are the challenges? So, I've just summarized some of the challenges that I think have been most impactful for foster carers, for connected carers. Childhood trauma. So the children that go to live with these friends and family, they bring a lot of their own trauma with them. And many of them need specialist therapeutic input and can really struggle with their emotions, which can lead to challenging behavior, to some horrible words that are said that they might not necessarily mean. And it's not just the children's trauma, it's the trauma of the adults that they're placed with as well. Often we see generational trauma kind of going down from the parents to the children. And sometimes there can be something that really triggers these carers that the children have been through before. I mentioned this before, contact. This is something that does continue to be a bit of a strain on the placement, even after final orders are made, because obviously, as the children are in their family network, they see their family, their birth parents a lot more. And this can be really difficult, especially because, for example, we have a lot of grandparents who are connected carers, kinship carers, and they often say to me, "I feel like I'm having to choose between my grandchildren and my child." And they say it's an impossible decision, but we have to put the grandchildren first because our own children, they're adults now and they've made these decisions, but it doesn't make the situation any easier. Navigating the system, that's another real struggle that people have. Um, and this is in line with the whole term of being a foster carer. So these people have never signed up to be a foster carer. They're signed up to care for these children in really stressful and difficult situations. And they're now termed a foster carer. And they have all of these things that are expected of them. And they suddenly have to become an expert in the whole system, fostering panel, national minimum standards, going to meetings, advocating for themselves and children, all the jargon that we use in social care as workers, which I think we're all guilty of using sometimes. And these carers, they say to me, "I'm just Nanan," or "I'm just Pops." And they don't kind of see that identity of being a foster carer. And employment and finances, that's another really big impact. I've seen quite often that carers have had to either significantly reduce their hours for the care and responsibilities. I've seen them lose their jobs where employers have really not been kind or appreciative of the situation. And a lot of the times it's because they're having to care for these children in emergency situations. There's a lot of time, there's no time to prepare for these things. They're on the spot asked, will you have these children? Sometimes will you have these children right this second? So obviously all of this kind of comes last because they want to look after these children, but it has a massive impact on employment and finances. Again, much more impactful hearing this from the carers themselves. So I'm going to run through some quotes from them in their own words. So this carer had said, "The assessment was a lot of hours and very invasive. It's been challenging fitting in all the appointments. I couldn't manage it all if I worked full time." And this carer, she had to stop working full time and she had to work part time to fit in all those things. Again, having an impact on her finances. And not just that, it was her career progression as well. She was very career driven and focused. And all of that has kind of had to be put on a back burner. And while she wasn't resentful at all, and she was glad to have the opportunity to care for this child, it still has impact on their own lives as well. These carers have said, "We didn't know what to expect. It was a split-second decision. It feels like a duck being a duck paddling in the water. On the surface, you're calm and dealing with it all, but underneath, you're thinking, I don't know what I'm doing." Again, speaking to the fact that a lot of the times these people are having to deal with very emergency situations and have absolutely no idea what they're signing up for other than giving this child a home and somewhere safe to stay. So some more kind of patterns in feedback. These carers had said the practicality of having someone else living with you isn't the hard bit. You do it without thinking. It's all the outside bits that catch you off guard. And another carer had said, all the paperwork and external stuff is the last thing I think about at night and the first thing I think about in the morning, which I think for me, that seems really terrible because the main thing on their mind should just be the actual caring aspect and looking after these children. But actually, what overtakes all of that is all the paperwork and all the assessments and all the meetings and all these things that, again, they didn't sign up for, that now they're having to become an expert in. And so at this point in the presentation, this was where I was originally going to just focus on the struggles that kinship carers face and what is needed from government to kind of help address these issues. But we have had a bit of good news. There's been a vital new strategy that looks to shape the outlook of kinship care in the UK called the National Kinship Care Strategy. So on the 15th of December 23, the government published the first ever National Kinship Care Strategy for England. And they've put millions of pounds of investment for the first year of a 4-year trial of financial allowances in 8 local authorities to start with. They're doing updated guidance for local authorities, new guidance for employers, new training and support, which the organisation Kinship will deliver. And as I say, so this is the 4-year trial of financial allowances, but again, only in 8 local authorities for special guardians where the child was previously looked after. And a little bit to note about the virtual schools extension and support. So although all children in kinship care are included in part of the extension of the virtual school role, only those cared for under special guardianship or child arrangement orders, regardless of whether they were classed as looked after or not, will benefit from extended advice and information offer from the virtual school. So again, there's a little bit of almost gatekeeping involved in what kind of support can be offered depending on what orders that a child is on. And there's also been a rebranding of the Adoption Support Fund to the Adoption Support and Special Guardianship Fund. But it doesn't change the eligibility of the fund, so it continues to only extend to kinship carers with special guardianship or child arrangement orders. So again, incredible first step, but as with any initial strategy, there are a lot of limitations to this. So the one of the main ones being financial allowances for carers. It's great that they're doing this trial, but really we'd want to see this across the board. And I'm not saying too little too late by any means, but I do think this has come far too late for carers, and all the carers that aren't, included in all of these things or don't have the right orders, they're not going to get the support that they need. We need statutory paid leave for kinship carers in employment that's equal to adoption leave. Really, really important because they are having to do the same role as someone who has adopted a child. Much greater support for children to help them heal and thrive from their experiences. It would be great to see a range of well-funded therapeutic and trauma-informed support because we want to help these children form healthy relationships and really flourish throughout their lives moving forward. Um, and again, we're waiting on the implementation of the new guidance for local authorities later this year. So that should hopefully set out really clear advice and expectations on what support for kinship families should look like moving forward. This is the part where I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at key learning for professionals. You're looking at those thinking, that's really obvious, but I really think it's important to kind of hammer these down. So patience and understanding. So these are all the things that I think would be beneficial if you're supporting a kinship care family arrangement. And I mentioned this before, we so often use jargon in social care, and I think sometimes we forget that we even use it or forget these terms aren't obvious to everybody, maybe because we've worked in it for a long time or we're just confident in our role. And a lot of these carers, they say to me, we've either never had any social care involvement before or we've had very little, and they've never experienced anything like this before. And they don't need to become experts in all of this jargon. That's for us to worry about and not for them to worry about. So just a real understanding that they're having to learn a whole new thing while still looking after the child that they're caring for under really stressful circumstances. And they're also probably still trying to work and manage their own family issues. Time is another really key one. We see it everywhere, don't we? Caseloads are increasing. We as professionals never have time. And while I'm not trying to ignore or, understate the pressures on workers. Giving families some of your time to listen as a support to them is so vital. And I really truly believe that sometimes that just listening to them and giving them your time can make the difference between the placement lasting or breaking down. And actually, that's something that a carer said to me just this week, that she felt like if she hadn't had people listening, even when she just needed a rant, she didn't really need anything from me. She was talking through these problems herself. Just having someone to listen is really key, because a lot of the times they can't speak to friends and family about this because they're keeping confidentiality for the child, or people just don't understand because these situations are so difficult. Collaboration, working with all the agencies involved, not just because it's part of the working together document, but sharing information and ideas on how to support the family. But most importantly, have the kinship carers involved in these conversations, which leads into the next point of treating them as experts in their field, because they are going to know what works best for them in those instances. So it's all very well coming up with ideas or interventions that you think might be helpful, but unless you're involving the people in those conversations, it's not going to be very meaningful. And like I say, they are experts in their field. They are experts in these children. So we go in, we do some visits, we do some meetings, and then we go home. And then over the weekend, over the evenings, they're the ones who know what cuddly toy can calm a meltdown, how they like to brush their teeth, how they can be coaxed to brush their teeth sometimes. And it really key the memories that they can share of the child's family. And I've had this especially when children have suffered bereavements of their parents and they're placed with kinship carers, that it's almost like gold dust, these memories that they can share of the parents that they're not with anymore. And I just also wanted to again quickly mention the difference between a family arrangement and kinship care. So something I quite often hear from frontline professionals is that, well, the family, they've come to this arrangement themselves, so we don't have to get involved and we don't have to worry about any kind of orders. But if there are safeguarding concerns that mean a child isn't safe to go back to their parents, you need to seriously reconsider the notion of it's just a private family arrangement. Speak to your managers, speak to the safeguarding teams in the areas in which you work, because it's so important, not just important for the safety of the children, but it's important for the support of these families. I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of kind of gatekeeping in terms of who can access what support depending on the orders. So yeah, if nothing else as a professional, really consider that aspect of it. And then just wrapping up, here are a couple of organisations, the Family Rights Group at the bottom, but the one I really want to highlight is the Kinship organisation, and they've done a lot of work driving this new strategy. So I'd strongly recommend you go on there, and it's great for kinship carers as well. There's loads of advice and guidance on there, and they put a lot of updates on there as well. Um, if anyone has any questions or feedback, that's my email on the screen now. I realise I have whizzed through so many complicated things, and I really appreciate you sticking with it. But again, if you need any other signposting or have any other questions, feel free to email me. And then lastly, a bit of a boring one at the end, but here are all my references. And again, all of the statistics were taken from the Gov website. So if you wanted to have a look on there, then have a look over there, definitely. And the last thing is to say thank you all so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak. And I hope that this has kind of given you a bit more of an idea on kinship carers and in their own words as well.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was just a really thoughtful and comprehensive um, run through some very complex material, and just really got that sense it was so carer centered and child centered, and that children ultimately do want to live with family. Having spent the last decade working in fostering, I've learned a lot from the session, and I'm just really grateful that you were able to present at Social Work Week. So yes, we've put in the chat the feedback form, and the chat is open. If you want to put any comments about the session, that would be really great for feedback. And just to thank you again, Carrie, great session. And thanks everybody for attending. There's still a couple of sessions left. We're nearing the end of the week, but if you can join us. But thanks for joining this session. It is really, really important that we put kinship care right at the centre of children's permanence arrangements. So thank you for that, and have a good day, everybody.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye. Bye.